Hey everyone, Chris here. Thanks for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Today we're not going to do a coffee and crime because there is no coffee involved today. This girl has already had a little too much, so we're going to just leave that part out. But we are going to dive back into the Grant Amato case and kind of pick up where we left off. We're going to talk a little bit about the interrogation and a little bit about the trial. So where we left off, now if you remember, Grant Amato had become obsessed, completely over the top, in love with a webcam girl named Sylvia. She was from Bulgaria. Grant had pretty much stolen, not pretty much, he had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from his family to pay for this webcam girl, and father kicked him out of the house. And where we left off on the last video, the police show up to the house to do a wellness check on the brother Cody and found that Margaret the mother, Chad the father, and Cody the brother were all murdered in the home. Now on January 26, 2019, the police find Grant at a local hotel, and you know, Grant was very cooperative. He wasn't putting up a struggle. He was willingly going with the police. They wanted to bring him down to the station for questioning, and he went. And the weird thing about that I found was really strange was never once did he even ask why he was being taken in or what had happened. Kind of weird. So they took him in for questioning. They sat down, and for the first couple hours, they were asking all, you know, the basic questions. What he did for work, what he did for work in the past, what his interests and hobbies were, you know, the basic stuff. Now, the cops at this point are really trying to dive deep and get a very detailed description as to where Grant was the 24th and the 25th of January. They want literally step-by-step accounts. So Grant answers all their questions very casually. So Grant talks about leaving his house. He talks about packing up his bags. He talks about leaving the house around 9:30, which on a side note later he did retract and said he left around, you know, a little after midnight. And I think the reason he retracted that was because the cops were really pressuring him on this meeting with his brother. Remember in the first video I had talked about he met his brother down the road and they had a talk, and his brother was going to take care of things. Well, when that wasn't all adding up and Grant was getting a little bit flustered, he changed his story to he left the house just shortly after midnight, and that meeting never even happened on the side road. He did say that he went to a local store called Publix to use their Wi-Fi. Now, Publix was already closed at the time, but their Wi-Fi was always running. He talked about going into Panera Bread before checking into the DoubleTree Hotel. He does mention that once he does check into the hotel, he never left. He basically checked his emails and, wouldn't you know it, surprise, surprise, logs on to message his webcam girl, Sylvie. I do want to point out that during the interrogation, Grant really kept reiterating the fact that he was very scared of his dad and that his brother Cody kept telling him he was going to take care of things. He kept talking about that an awful lot, and the cops were questioning him on that because I guess at one point the father, when he had kicked him out, said, you know, if you ever come back here, I'm going to kill you. So he kept really reiterating the fact that he was really scared of dad and that his brother Cody was going to take care of things and, you know, don't worry about anything. So what I find really interesting in this whole interrogation is The fact that after 2 hours of talking to Cody, questioning him, getting answers, you know, talking back and forth, one of the detectives finally said, "Do you even know why you are talking to us?" Well, Grant replied, quote, "I honestly don't know, but I'm pretty freaked out at this point," end quote. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm pretty sure most of us, if the cop showed up at your door, asked you to come down to the station, is questioning you for 2 hours, don't you think the natural response is to start asking tons of questions? Like, why are you questioning me? What's wrong? What happened? Is my family okay? You know, I would be asking a million questions. Never once did Grant ask why he was being questioned, what was happening, if everything was okay. I find that so bizarre and a little suspicious, if you know what I'm saying. So at one point during the interrogation, the detectives did bring up the fact that they were able to trace back his digital footprint through his cell phone and, you know, pinging off of cell towers and stuff. And they place him very close to the home. Now, Grant admitted that he started driving back to the house, but then changed his mind, turned around and left. Well, the detectives then said, well, if you were driving to the house, did you not happen to notice all the cop cars, the news vans, and all the commotion that was going around your house? Didn't that make you curious as to what was going on? He didn't really answer in a very specific way. He kind of just, well, you know, I didn't know. I don't know. I didn't know. He's always very nonchalant about his answers. He said that he went to Panera Bread. He did a search for the top news stories and found out that there was a shooting/murder on his street. But he said he didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do. Now, if you remember from earlier, I mentioned that he said he went back to Panera Bread, then went back to the hotel and messaged Sylvie. So my thought process through the whole thing is, there's a murder on your street. He hasn't heard from his family, and Grant decides his first priority is to go message his webcam girl, Sylvie. Sounds a little off to me. So during the rest of the interrogation, the cops just proceed to just really try to drill down his answers, because they do keep changing slightly, and he just really proceeds to say that he doesn't know what happened, blah, blah, blah. After the interrogation, his older brother Jason ends up showing up, talks to him for a few minutes. The next day, he was released from custody. 2 days later, on January 28th, the investigators did obtain an arrest warrant, and he was picked up and was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. So that's basically it for the interrogation. If you're interested in watching the full interrogation, I will post a copy of the link in the description field below. And in the meantime, we are going to jump into a quick brief talk about the trial. So here we are at the trial. Grant Amato has been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, and surprise, not surprised, Grant pleads not guilty. So there's just a few things I want to talk about the trial, because the trial was, well, I wouldn't say it was a long trial, but there was a lot of information given, a lot of witnesses, a lot of experts, you know, criminal analysis, forensics, all that kind of stuff. But there's just a few things I want to touch on that I thought were not more important than others, but maybe just interesting. One of the things we have to remember is when the police showed up at the house to do the wellness check, there was no sign of forced entry. There was no broken windows. Nothing was amiss. And everything was locked and secured. So that's the first thing. Another thing that really struck out was the fact that he was home all day. So by his own admission, Grant talks about the fact that he was home all day, he was packing, he was in the house, and remember we had talked about the fact that at first he said he left at 9:30, but then changed his story to the fact that he left a little after midnight. So during the trial, the forensics, the criminal analysis, everybody shows that Margaret, the mother, was murdered at her desk in the back of the head. Chad, the father, was shot in the kitchen, still wearing his work clothes. And it was proven that he did leave work in the afternoon and was home by about 5:30 in the afternoon. During the trial, it was stated that the first gunshot to the father did not kill him, and on the crime scene photos you can see what appears to be the father kind of crawling across the floor, and then it was a second shot to the head that was the fatal one. Cody, the brother, was shot in the face in the hallway by the garage. One of the things that the prosecutors really tried to dive deep into during this trial was the timeline, because if you piece it all together, none of it makes sense. You know, the mother works from home, she's at her desk, but she's been shot. Last known activity on her computer was about 4:45. The father gets home from work, he's still in his work clothes, he's shot. Cody gets back to the house. The brother Cody gets back to the house around 9:30ish, and he's shot as well. But now Grant's saying that he never even left the house till after midnight. So according to Grant, he would have left the house after midnight, and all this stuff would have happened between, you know, say, let's just, you know, for argument's sake, say between midnight and 6 a.m. So you know, you would have to believe that the mother was still sitting at her desk after midnight. Dad is still in his work clothes in the kitchen. Like, none of it makes sense. Another thing that was really interesting was the fact that the scene was set up, it was actually staged to look like a murder-suicide. They knew that wasn't the case because after doing the investigation and everything, they found that there was actually no GSR, no gunshot residue on anybody's hands. And while one of Cody's guns was found at the scene, there were shell casings from that gun placed around the bodies. It was proven by forensics that the bullets that killed the family did not come from that gun. And to this day, the gun that actually was used to murder the family has never been found. It was also stated in the trial that none of the shots that killed the family were at close range shots. So if it was a murder-suicide, you would think that the last person to kill himself, it would have been a close range shot. You can't, you know, put your hand 3 feet away and kill yourself. That was also proven in the trial that there was no way this could have been a murder-suicide. There was also a note found in Grant's car written as Cody, but it was later determined that it was, you know, Grant that wrote it. And prosecutors figure that it was Grant's intent to go back to the house to plant this murder/suicide note. When he was heading back, that's when he noticed all the cop cars and news vans. So that idea went out the window, so he quickly turned around and left. And that was a really key point in what the prosecutor was trying to drive home to the jury. You see how this is all kind of coming together? Another interesting thing that was brought up in the trial is the fact that Dad's phone was unlocked. It was unlocked after he was murdered. And you can do this one of two ways. You can either enter the code or you can use your fingerprint to unlock the phone. Now, the prosecution argues that someone had taken Dad's finger after he shot, wiped the blood off on his shirt, and placed the finger on the phone to unlock it. Now, why do you think that would happen? Well, it was also discovered later that Grant had accessed Chad, the dad's, bank account and had made Grant an authorized user on that account. Not looking too good for old Grant there. So now it's 3 a.m. and Grant ends up at the Publix. We already know this from Grant's own admission, and not only from his own admission, but the IT guy from Publix had come in to testify that they keep the records of all unique addresses, logging onto their Wi-Fi. They keep the records, and it shows that Grant had accessed their Wi-Fi from about 3 a.m. to about 5 a.m. You wonder, well, what is this guy doing in the middle of a parking lot in the middle of the night? Well, surprise, surprise, he checks his emails, and what does he do? He logs on to Sylvia's web page. Remember Sylvia? His love life, the girl he cannot let go of. Yeah, so the trial itself lasted several days. Like I said, there was many witnesses, a lot of expert testimony. It was a pretty good trial. Once again, I will post a link to the beginning of the trial in the description field below for anybody that actually wants to watch the full trial. I felt like the prosecution did a really good job in their closing arguments, in the way they had really told the story that there was no other option other than Grant murdering his family in this case. They really did a good job, I felt, of painting the timeline of how everything happened and how Grant's story, it couldn't even have happened the way he had said it did because of the timeline and all the digital footprints and where they had found the bodies, the location, everything else. I thought it was done very well. The jury came back after about 8 hours of deliberating and found him guilty on all 3 charges of first-degree murder. Now, Grant still claims that he is innocent and that he did not kill his family. So that's the story of Grant Amato. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I found this case absolutely fascinating. If I got any of the information wrong or I misspoke, I mean no disrespect to the family or to anybody involved. I try to do my best to get the accurate information. And like always, if you're interested in hearing about more true crime stories and my take on them, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell. Anyway, you guys, I hope everybody's doing well and taking care of yourselves, and we will talk with you next time.